So today I'm so thrilled to welcome two people who have been teachers and mentors of mine and have also become very, very dear friends. And I'm very honored to be in sacred community with them both. Reverend Angel Kyodo Williams is an author, maverick spiritual teacher, master trainer, and founder of Transformative Change. She also co-wrote Radical Dharma, which has become the basis of several retreats, including Radical Dharma Camp and The Conversation, of which I am a very proud alumni. And Karen Mahan Carrington is the vice chair of our board at Hollyhock, creator of climatehope.earth, this amazing body of work as a longtime climate activist and lifelong environmentalist and organizer for climate justice. So we're in for a very rich conversation today. Our deepest thanks to you both. And over to you, Karen.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces from our previous weeks. Nice to see some new faces. I am sitting on the back deck at Hollyhock on the lodge. Our campus is closed, but the maintenance team is getting it all shiny and new for when we can welcome guests back. And it's an incredibly beautiful day here on Cortez Island. So maybe you can hear some of the bird sounds or some of the waves behind me. And I'd invite you all just to slow down and arrive. And maybe let's start by doing 3 deep breaths together. So a deep inhalation, and the thing about a deep breath is it's really important to do a deep exhalation. You can empty your lungs. So let's do 3 deep breaths together. And on the exhale, maybe let out a sigh. Okay. Well, let's begin. I too want to thank Angel for joining us. Angel and I both worked together recently at an organization, Stand.Earth, that Angel serves on the board of, and I was the program director for. And I see we have some Stand.Earth friends online and friends from all over. So welcome, Angel. Where are you calling us? Where are you speaking to us from?
Well, I ran out and went into the garden as soon as Ling said that you were on the deck. I was like, I'm going to go out, go and get some outside time. I am zooming in from Oakland, California, to a sweet little place that I just moved to in the midst of, just as the stay-at-home orders began in California, and I'm really feeling a sense of deep gratitude for being able to be here, and I'm really happy to be here with you all. And you know, I just feel like I dropped right into my beloved family, close family, classical family that I want to spend time with. You know, already in process party, and I get to, you know, spend the last bit of the party, which is always the best part.
Well, it's so nice to be talking to you on such a beautiful day. I don't know how it's been in California. It's been very rainy in British Columbia the last few days. And I've been saying to people how fascinating it is that, you know, I've had very good days in the past 3 weeks and some really, really hard days. Mm-hmm. And just really living into the extremes of this time. It's so intense. Mm-hmm. And just, you know, trying to let myself feel let myself be where I'm at and feel all the different feelings, let them move through me. So that really brings me to the first question I wanted to ask you. I mean, it's such a profound time in how we live and how we think about our connection with each other, with the earth. And while there's, you know, many struggles and many learnings at this time, how do you see this time in terms of what do you think is the central learning that we could take from this time?
Um,
It's just a small question.
you didn't start with the lightest thing. You know, what I have taken from this time, and I feel the echoes of, especially as the time has been extended, you know, for many people until, you know, at least May 15th, is how powerful what powerful operators. I mean, I certainly have known and talk about it and deal with it, and the powerful nature of how structures operate in our society to distribute something as agnostic as a virus, and the impact of that virus is the thing that I take away. That even though in some ways, you know, when people, you know, can say, and it's true, that the virus has no interest in our borders, it has no interest in our, you know, the country, what we come from, our heritage. It rides along the structures that have been put in place in society, so that the burden of it lands more devastatingly on certain peoples, and that our lack of equity around things such as healthcare and housing and shelter and food and health, you know, access to healthy environments, and over time, like not just in a moment, right? That the history and the way that history and how we've structured things in society over not just, you know, the last, like, you know, month or a week or you know, year or 4 years for the US and our, you know, president, and but for hundreds of years have played out, so that we can really see both how amazing it would be, you know, if we had systems that really distributed things in a way that guaranteed a kind of fundamental access to health, and but also how broken that is, you know, and how really uncommitted people, you know, certain aspects of government are committed to not having them fixed, and simultaneously how deeply committed ordinary humans and frontline people and nurses and caretakers are to trying to make it work for folks. I mean, the two things coming together are like such, like I feel inside of the thunderclap of these these very stark realities, running just head on into each other with not so much noise to get in the way of how how truthful it is, and how stark it is.
Right. That's really fascinating. So you're saying that because the virus is as raw a form of nature, as untouched by human, it has never, in fact, interacted with our species, and yet the moment that it does, its interaction is literally defined by the structures that we've put in place in society, particularly the structures relating to privilege, which of course relates to race and the whole network of these structures. That's how toxic and powerful our structures are.
Yeah, there's such I mean, you know, climate change, right? And so the people that have denied climate change, it's like, oh, now who knew we would have this opportunity to kind of get out of the way, you know, of nature and of climate for just this small period of time, and then we can see our impact, and so we can see our impact in a sort of direct relationship to our ecosystem and how we've been impacting it, and we can also see how the actual structures we've created are, you know, it intervene in a kind of you know, natural unfolding of nature. I mean, the sun shines on everyone, but you know, some of us have shade, and we all breathe the same air, but some of our air has been made toxic over you know, periods of time, so that we have, you know, frailer lungs. I mean, certainly it's different in terms of people with elderly bodies and, declining systems. I actually think of that more along the lines of nature, right? That there is sort of natural decline. So exactly what you're saying, our imposition on the natural order is so stark.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, I think it's important not to go to, what's the happy place in all of this, because I think it's really important for us to sit with the sadness and sit with the grief. So with that said, do you think that maybe the way that, particularly in the US, this virus has an uneven hardship, has taken an overly undue hardship, particularly on Black people, is what we're reading in the Canadian press. Do you think that this surfacing of that level of yet another example of these inequities might serve some greater awakening? How can we make it so, Angel? How can we make it so?
I think it's really important for us, for those of us that understands ourselves as liberal, progressive, human loving, embracing of humanity and all of the things, working beyond or towards getting beyond our biases, our inherited biases and social biases and things, to just remember this really fundamental fact. The people that have had their hands on the levers of power actually do not care. And this will not wake them up. This will not make them go, oh my goodness, they have known this. It has been part of a design, and it is something that they, that incidents like these actually tend to further whole narratives around the apparent lesser than-ness of whoever these kinds of things fall upon. So it really is incumbent upon those of us that know in our heart and our gut to first, as you said, Karen, to really sit with it, to not go and look for, shake our fist at the whatever politician and just hope that they will take care of it. This is a sustained and ongoing failure of not governments, of people, of people, of those of us that say we care, and then turn over, like abdicate our responsibility to stand in that care in an active way. We abdicate that to, a vote. We abdicate that, to this session of Congress or Parliament, or and we have to do really much better. So I think we feel the tingling quality of confronting a reality in a different way, and we could reach for the snooze button, and there's very good reasons that, there are even people, those of us with, privilege, are looking at income and livelihood upended, and I get all of that, like the order of things, dealing with children in the home and getting them back to school. So there's so much to lull us back to sleep, and to fixate in some ways on trying to put it back again. And I keep saying, hashtag no turning back. Like we can't go back. And so the answer, I think, to your question is yes. I think it can stimulate a profound awakening if we let it. And the question is, will we choose to allow it to enter into our bones, our guts, our flesh enough to let it, to let ourselves be with the discomfort until the intolerability of that discomfort in our own bodies demands that we do something really different. And that we know that it is not it will happen in, when the virus goes back wherever it comes from, or the next election. It is a wakefulness that is being begged of us from the climate, from other species, the porpoises that are, returning to the coasts and saying like, thank goodness you all are away for a little while. it's just being demanded of us. Will we respond? Will we take our rightful role as stewards, and not dominators?
So that's fascinating. So what I hear really you saying, or what I'm taking away from that, is that the question isn't, will I sit in my living room and watch to see whether this changes society, but how will I be changed in the way that I can engage? Because the levers of power, as you say, and as actually that's been a theme through the 6 weeks of these conversations, there's been a theme around those that have power will do everything they can to retain it, and as long as we let them, then things will go on unchanged, or perhaps get more severe from where they are right now. So the question around, is this a moment of awakening or transformation, really is to each and every one of us here on this call and in this moment. Is there something that you would do differently? Quite in a significantly. I mean, we're not talking, this is a really significant moment to think about, how do we live? How do we engage? How do we act? And certainly towards that, there have been so many teachings. Particularly, I've been sitting with the one around uncertainty, Angel. There's the Buddhist principles around uncertainty. But I feel like, we at Hollyhock we meet every week and we say, do you think we'll open? Will we not open? Well, how would we open? What are the considerations? We just literally don't know day to day. And so there has been, I think for all of us, a letting go. We've been forced to let go of any illusion of control that we previously had. And really sit with, we really don't know. I mean, I think for us, and it's different everywhere, but I mean, I think it's true that we don't know. Well, I can say even just a little microcosm of Hollyhock, we don't know if he might be able to open as soon as July or never, or not until next year. We just absolutely don't know. And just staffing and programming, and this is one little microcosm. So it is this massive teaching in uncertainty, and being comfortable with it, and being being lithe within it, being able to move and have some resilience. So what do you take from your Buddhist teachings around uncertainty that we could apply?
Yeah, I mean, people have, think about, very, very, in a very heartful way, in a very intentional way, like, what is mine to do? And I say, what is yours to not do? Clearly our doing is not getting us where we need to be. And so it is developing the capacity to be with uncertainty is, I think, perhaps the most profound work that we can do to develop the capacity. It's not just to say, no, uncertainty is there, and say, wow, I don't know. And so until I know, then, then I have to be with this don't know. That's not the idea. The idea is to actually develop one's capacity to be with uncertainty, and all of what arises with that, the feelings and the noticing and awareness of the compulsion to dissipate uncertainty, and what comes with that compulsion in our own bodies. It seems, it's sort of like, okay, like I can see I'm wanting to go and check the calendar or check the news, or somehow if I know everything about the virus, I'll be able to control it and keep it away from my body. And it's like, no, actually there's just uncertainty. And if I can be with the uncertainty, there is room for a kind of wisdom to arise that I couldn't even fathom with all of that energetic, elbowing out of uncertainty and the discomfort of uncertainty. We will respond from our habits if we don't have a new reference point from which to respond. We will respond from the habits of muscle memory, from our imagination of what it is that makes us safe, even our sense of like, what can we live with and not live with anymore? What can we stop? It will come from our habituation. It will not come from wisdom if we don't allow ourselves to be with uncertainty.
So then how do we anchor what is the wisdom of this time? I don't, Angel, you probably knew, or Rabbi Zalman Schachter, who's the wisdom chair at Europa. He passed a few years ago. And he said, if only I was the sum of all of my ahas. But in fact, we have them, and they're wonderful, and they're fleeting. So this is, it's kind of like a bit of a meditation school for us all. We're having to sit still, and we're having to slow down, and we're having to give over our sense of control. But how can we root the learnings of this time then, so that we don't go back to our habits, do you think?
You know, I wish it was like, well, if you just do this.
Yeah. That's what I want. I want 3 steps, Angel.
You do this. I mean, I think, it's funny because, and Ling knows, in Radical Dharma, in the work of Radical Dharma, we talk about this notion of 3 things: disarming, disrupting, and deconstructing. And the first thing is disarming. It is the most challenging thing to disarm. To disarm ourselves, to recognize, and disarm is actually coming into, to develop a practice, to take on a practice that lets you sit in that uncertainty and like feel your feelings, like feel the feelings that come up when you don't, you just can't like put it somewhere, when you don't just have an answer, you just can't pull it. And like to feel all of those feelings of uncertainty, and to, as I said, to develop the capacity to, when I say capacity, what I mean is like nervous system tolerance, right? Like our nervous system has to be toned to be more tolerant of the discomfort of uncertainty. It's not just the not knowing here. It's like when I try to know and have an answer and solve it, I'm evading the sensations that happen in my body. Guilt, the potential for guilt, the potential for like, maybe I won't get it right, or the desperately wanting to get it right, or have it all answer, or will it take too much time? Will it cost too much money? Will I have to give up too much, right? Like all the things will happen. Will it all fall apart? Yeah, it might. And you don't know, and sitting with uncertainty and death are like the same thing in the Buddhist sort of lens of what one's sitting with, because death is uncertainty. So uncertainty is death on an ongoing basis, right? It's sitting with death. It's contemplating death. It's contemplating that everything everything you think everyone they will eventually be lost to you, and to contemplate that, meaning to let it sit in your body, to be present with it, so that you are disarming yourself of the ways in which you've been, and we say, weaponized. Not that you're like out there pulling the trigger on drones, but that you've been taught and socialized to seek after certain kinds of comfort, to avoid certain kinds of discomfort, to want to know some things, to like have those ahas and then go back to the way things were. And so you've been weaponized in that way. It's the soft weapons, it's not the big ones that we look at, we go, oh, a cannon, and and it blew something up. It's like, no, we're the ongoing like soft slow release of poison that takes all the oxygen from the people that can't afford to have any oxygen taken away from them anymore. We have to do that work of disarming ourselves of not knowing what lands we are on, disarming ourselves of not knowing the history of the societies that we inhabit, not knowing disarming ourselves of not knowing, how did my family to come to have this money? Like, why do I have so much privilege?
Well, I'm also lucky. It must be because I'm very clever.
Very clever. Why do things flow to me in that way? Why,
Yeah. Why do I have the confidence to speak in a group? So you said that was the first D. I'm intrigued to hear the other 2.
Yeah, it's not it's circular and, you know, kind of moves in and out, but it really does this. I can't say enough how important disarming is, because if you start to try to disarm before you do the second one, which is to disrupt, then you will disrupt with the same habituation, right? In many ways, much of what we think is, you know, going against or pushing back against our systems or structures or governments or so on, are actually just reifying them, strengthening them. They're tolerant of a certain amount of our engagement with them, as long as we engage along the same rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement are power over, domination, you know, struggle, fight. Those are the rules. And so as long as we engage along those rules, the same rules of the game, and since the game currently is being defined and shaped by a certain momentum, a very momentous orientation around domination. Very much so. It's not one single person, one single time, one single moment, one set of laws, one country, one particular country, you know, one set of borders. It's a momentum towards a sensibility that, you know, domination wins. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't do the work of disarming ourselves, you know, and I wish it were that we could just disarm ourselves completely and then we could get into the disruption, but that's not how it happens. So it is a cyclical, like, oh, disarm, and then disrupt, and then we go, oh, look at that thing, the way that I disrupted it, I've actually become a part of it. And that leads to the third D, which is to deconstruct, right? And as you deconstruct, you come back to disarming again, right? Like it's deconstruct. So it's like disarm, try to, you know, get it out of your system, try to learn, understand what you're doing, how you participate, then go ahead and take some action, because, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road, and we have to see how it turns out, and there are no guarantees. And so that's when uncertainty is really good, because we just go, I'm going to fling myself out there and I have no idea. I might, I'm going to leave my American foul mouth out, you know, I might jack it up more, and you might. And that's what, you know, the uncertainty is valuable for it, because you can, when we sit with that certainty, we get comfortable with uncertainty. One of the things that arises out of being able to sit with uncertainty is a compassion towards ourselves. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and I'm sitting with the cyclical, interactive nature of disarm, disrupt, deconstruct, and certainly I've, you know, as an activist, I've certainly disrupted, you know, before I have disarmed. And we'll continue to, I'm sure, make that mistake, but in each of it, there's an unfolding and a learning, and it's iterative and interactive.
Yeah, it's very, very iterative, and it's humbling how iterative it is. And I think that that's the power of it. It's like, it's humbling to go like, oh yeah, that thing I thought I was saying 10 years ago that was so clever and so on point. First of all, it turns out somebody was saying it 200 years ago. And second of all, it turns out that I'm like making a mess of it, and I'm just adding to, you know, I'm like putting, like, you know, mortar in the bricks of the structures of society in the way that I'm approaching it.
Right. How do we not, and that's the dance of, and yet one needs to act, one needs to engage, and through the engagement we will see some of the ways in which we are both contributing to, you know, both being a part of the problem and a part of the solution, as the old saying goes.
Absolutely. And it is humbling. It is, I mean, humbling. And when I say humbling, I don't, you know, I've come from the Zen tradition. We say words like humbling, we mean like, oh, right? Just humbling, like so humbling.
Yeah.
Right. Just devastating. Like you're devastated. And so you have to build up the will force to meet your own devastation, to be confronted with devastation, and to fall apart again and again and again. There's a kind of will that has to be developed, and also to hold that brokenness and fold it into your your practice, to fold it into your action, to, you know, to not come undone by it.
When I was young, this is quite a while ago, young forest activist, we were blockading the logging of the clear cutting of the old growth rainforest here on Vancouver Island in Clayoquot Sound. And, you know, we were, and it was
my Shiro.
Oh, thank you. But wait for it. In terms of the you know, we were fully disarmed. So it was, you know, I'm proud of the protest, and the area is now a UN Biosphere Reserve, and it was the biggest disobedience in Canada at its time. And we found out later that there was a huge rise in domestic violence at that time, because there we were frustrating these loggers who were doing what they knew to do, which was to go to work, and we were standing in the front of their bulldozers every day. And there was this, and we just gutted, right? I mean, we were gutted to find out that there was this huge rise in domestic violence. So that, you know, that's what came up for me as you were saying. You know, you can be cementing the very structures, and yet you need to act. I mean, it's still, you know, you need to act and not be, and just know that there is no perfect, there is no right, there is no there is no light without shadow. Yeah. and to go forward anyway.
Yeah, there's an enormous rise in domestic violence right now because of the sheltering in place. Enormous rise. I mean, just really phenomenal. And we could go, oh my goodness, and now, you know, we should freeze, or we should just stop sheltering in place, or, you know, I mean, that's not the answer. You know, death will come. And I think in many ways, what we're trying to figure out is, how do we understand, or we allow ourselves to hold the complexity of how these things are interlocking and overlapping with each other, to not stop everything that could possibly go wrong from going wrong, but to be more, to have a dignified death, you know, to have the way in which so many of these things we run into in our society, and the failures, and how it creates the conditions for, you know, domestic violence. You know, that we have to take in that, we're not going to stop it all, you know, at once and fix it, but they are really woven together. And so are we choosing, you know, people dying from, you know, hunger and so on because of their economic circumstances in the midst of a pandemic, or, you know, we're choosing death for them, or we choosing death for, you know, there will be death, and can it be a more dignified death? Can we have our hand in generating a society that creates a thriving life and a more dignified death for all of us, right? That is what we get to choose. We don't get to choose, because at some point, right, that choosing becomes also, right, like some function of our privilege, of who gets to live and who doesn't get to live, or, you know, or what kind of, you know, people being killed by a virus is better than people being killed by domestic violence. I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it reminds me of, I mean, it's not just a COVID issue, of course, it's the larger moment we're living. And there's a climate psychologist I've done a bit of work with in the UK, and she says, you know, she's in London, and she says the task now is not to keep calm and carry on, but rather to fall apart and carry on. And I like that.
Yeah.
So folks, we're going, I can see there's various people keeping up in the chat. Yeah. In about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to go into some breakout groups to process some of what we've heard. But I would welcome anyone that if you have a question for Angel, to put it in the chat. I won't be able to get to them all, but I'll be able to get to some of them. Because I feel so privileged to be able to ask you all my questions. Yeah, it's a lovely conversation. So go ahead and put questions in the chat. I have one more, which is, I saw that you recently gave a TED talk called "It's Not About Love After All," and I know you have something I enjoy about working with you, Angel, is the way in which you challenge us to look at our our assumptions, or, you know, in our shorthand, our spiritual shorthand of just all love everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I really am interested in that challenge. I'm wondering if you can tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, you know, so many of us are, I mean, understandably, you know, just we're ready to, you know, talk about how much we love people and we love the environment, and we, you know, we just want to love people, and can it be about love? And it's like, actually, no, not so much. Because if your love, if all of this love is not expressing itself as justice, if it is not.
Ling, what's happening now? Do we have Angel back?
It's just you, Karen, and your musings. It looks like Reverend Angel has just dropped off the call, and my guess is she's logging back in. So we might just have to
okay, no problem.
Continue with musings and maybe voicing some of the questions into the space, and hopefully she'll join us back again shortly.
Christine has written, some of us are not movers and shakers in the world. Does the presence of peace, words, holding space with disarmament still help in the greater consciousness? That's a lovely question. And of course, I would certainly say, you know, there's different ways for us all to contribute, right? I mean, I have done a lot of frontline activism, and that's not the way for a lot of people. A lot of people are contributing in all kinds of different ways, like community gardens on this island. It's been fascinating to look at how this small community has responded to this COVID crisis, with people offering up land for community gardens, doing you know, community kitchens and getting food out to people, all kinds of beautiful acts of love and service that are about building the new world that we want to see, which is a big role that needs to happen alongside people who are willing to, or wanting to do the front line of actually taking down the structures that are perpetuating the problems and inequity. And we have 8 or 9 minutes left that we can hear some closing reflections from Angel. Welcome back from the internet Netherlands, Angel.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm really appreciating that people are. That's the inquiry. I've been really encouraging people to even, you know, drill down further into, you know, what can I not do, and part of that is I think we all have to, in this, you know, sort of societies of consumption and inequity, to really get down to the heart of, like, what is enough for each of us, and because if we're not there, it'll be hard for us to, you know, and when I say enough, I don't just mean, you know, not just, you know, in terms of money, but also just in terms of, you know, our sense of addiction to, you know, social media, addiction to Netflix, addiction, like we see exhibited, you know, in our own personal lives, all of these ways in which we have been feeding on so much, you know, urgency and having to accomplish and productivity and all of these kinds of things. And it clouds our ability to actually feel into what is going on, so that we can rightfully, you know, out of a wise place, be really sensitive to what it is that is ours to do. So I invite people to think about, like, what is yours to not do? Right? How do you, what is the thing that you can let go of? And part of getting to that is really getting down deep into, like, what is enough? You know, and what is enough, in meaning, like, in terms of the things that I have, but also what is enough? What is the sort of the ends? We talk about untenability in radical Dharma. You know, what is the ends of what I can stand for? Because part of the way things continue to unfold in the pace and the you know, the level of you know, pain, has to do with so many of us that do have room and space to not just be, you know, walling, you know, thwarting, trying to thwart the ceiling in the sky from falling in on us. We have developed, I want to say, too much tolerance to the conditions. we are, yeah, we allow, uh, similar to what I was talking about earlier, Karen. It's like we're like, is it going to change? Like the what will be the new thing that will come out? We're sitting there, we're waiting for someone to do the new thing that maybe we'll see, and then we can latch onto. And it's like, we're the new thing. We're the next moment. We are the world that is to unfold. We can't go back to what it was, and how things will unfold will have directly to do with us. And if what we're spending our time with is trying to figure out is, will there be enough people that come along with us, then we'll all be stuck in pause. We'll all be like just stuck standing still, looking around, wondering who's going to show up differently.
I really like the what might I not do, because I'm one of those people that is a doer, and that I will, what is the problem? Let me fix it, and can lose myself utterly in the doing, and give more than I really had to give, and end up feeling depleted. And so this question of what is mine not to do invites a kind of a spaciousness and a clarity. So I really thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's been my practice, and that's, why I offer it is, and if I might, I'll offer this. I've been sharing this. It really, literally, I feel like I almost want to call it the Corona practice, because it so came to me in response to the coronavirus. And it is, so what is the kind of, in Buddhism, there's a lot of conversation, kind of less in Zen. It's interesting, more towards Tibetan, but it has to do with the Eight Noble Truths, or Eightfold Path. That the first thing on the Eightfold Path is right view or right understanding. And I think I often, because we have so much weird connotation around the idea of understanding, I think I use the word view. And so I think a lot about the view, it's basically saying you have to have a fundamental perspective shift, right? You have to get yourself situated in a different view of things, so that everything else that happens out of that unfolds according and along the lines of that view, rather than the view that you had prior, that is bringing the habituation, the muscle memory, the craving and attachment to a way of life in a particular way, like all of those things. It's like we have to shift the view. We shift the view, and then other parts unfold and feed into each other, similar to, in some ways, Disarm, Disrupt, Deconstruct is a modern and condensed version of an Eightfold Path, right? It's like disarm our view, disarm the way we understand things. So this is the view that I've been offering, is to take the sky view, I've been calling it. And the sky view is what the sort of conditions of working with ourselves that have to be present for us to be able to start leaning into a shift that doesn't just kind of knock us back because we go into so much contraction and overwhelm around how we approach it, that then we can't continue. So it begins with self-care, and that's the S. Radical self-care is what I like to say. And radical self-care is really important, because if, as you said, Karen, you just like give more than you have to give, you just will contract, and like a boom, you'll bounce back like a rubber band. It'll snap back and go right back to where you started. So radical self-care means to really look at, where are you located, and what are the things that it's important for you to give yourself, so that you can even have the kind of spaciousness, time, energy, sensibilities, energy available to you to even contemplate these things deeply, and not kind of as one thing you're ticking off in the midst of other urgencies. So really self-care. which actually gives way to the potential for, getting out for exercise, and getting some sun, which is why I decided to come out, like getting some light and, taking walks and taking breaks from the screen. And we were talking offline about, getting blue blocker glasses because we're all looking at screens. So, ordinary self-care, big self-care, feeding, all of those things, self-care, which leads to radical kindness, because we're going to really mess up in all kinds of ways, and so we have to have a great deal of kindness that will emanate from self-care, obviously towards ourselves, so that we can have kindness, radical kindness towards others, because people will say things that will turn us upside down. I was speaking to someone yesterday and they said, no one is, people are like invading the 6 feet and they're not, and the person was just like wiring themselves up. And I said, you have to be really an agency for your care. You can't rely on other people, and people are going to mess it up. They're going to go back to the habituated ways of shopping, and you just reach over someone and you won't think about it. And so we have to develop kindness. Otherwise we'll throw our own nervous systems off and, and then become part of the problem, as they say. And this one is always a paradox. So radical kindness, right, to oneself. We're just in don't know. We don't know how to do this. And if we allow for some kindness, the wisdom of listening to ourselves deeply will begin to emerge. And the last one, and I think where that wisdom comes from, is actually allow ourselves radical yearning to connect with the yearning that we have for what is possible, to also connect with the yearning and the grieving that is very closely connected to yearning, for what is lost, and to allow ourselves to grieve the things as they were before, and our own recognition of how we may have been in commission with a lot of systems and structures that are clearly not workable and clearly are giving over to pain. Yearning for things to be different, and then recognizing that they may not go the way that we intend, and so that yearning is allows us to really hold space for all of our complexity. So you could yearn for things that you just way are never going to get. You can yearn for things that are actually lost and they'll never come back to you. And you can yearn for things that are, maybe possible at this point or another point. The idea is not to fulfill the yearning, it is actually just to allow for it, right? To allow for the fullness of who we are, and to not shrink ourselves down into, tiny limited beings, so that we can be of service. Our thriving world is not going to be supported by you getting as small as you possibly can. So I want people to be whole and thriving and connected and caring, so that they can disarm and they can disrupt and they can then deconstruct and figure out how we put this back together again.
Beautiful. That is a beautiful way to end us off, Angel. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your wisdom and giving your life to this work, and uplifting us all through that. A couple of things by way of closing. So this was recorded, so there will be a video if you would like to refer back to it or send it on to your friends, as there will be for the previous 5 sessions, and they'll all be available on the Hollyhock website by the end of this week or early next. We're just editing them and getting them into good shape, so check back for that. There is Reverend Angel's website is Radical Dharma. Is it radicaldharma.org?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
Radicaldharma.org. Yep, you can check that out.
I'm putting in the chat an invite to our Liberated Life Network, which is what we've been doing some practice on, and including morning practice right about, which is why I came on just at the end at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And so it's fantastic. We call it a sit. We do no big deal sit. So you just come as you are. And,
every morning.
We've been doing from Tuesday to Friday mornings.
Oh, wonderful.
And then there's a secret sit that you only know about once you get in.
Okay, if that wasn't tantalizing enough for you, I don't know what will be. I'm going there.
And you can sit this evening, actually. I'm sorry. This evening at 5:30, we'll be sitting together as well.
Okay, so we can check on the Radical Dharma site and it will take us, we'll get that information there. And then a couple of other public service announcements. We at Hollyhock are putting together another program that'll be offered. There's two programs that are following on this. One is a workshop with Matthew Fox and myself on exploring the four paths. You'll see these four paths reflected in many different traditions, but the four paths that take us towards hope, acceptance, and action. So that will be this same time slot on May 28th, and then there'll be a workshop on the 30th. And then this series concludes with this workshop. This was a wonderful way to cap it off, but we will have a new series beginning. And Ling, do you want to tell us about that?
Sure, we are just in the midst of spinning it up. It will be held in the evenings. We're going to try an evening time slot for folks because that will help capture some people who are currently working or working from home. The first one will be Monday, May 11th at 5:15. They're interactive workshops. We're calling them how-to hawk shops. And for our first one, we'll be hearing from a couple of ER doctors in Vancouver on how to stay healthy and build a resilient immune system. And we've got some other great Hollyhock presenters lined up for the future weeks. So keep an eye on your email and on at hollyhock.ca for more information on those.
Okay, and I invite everyone to unmute yourself and we can all say goodbye.
Oh, that's awesome. We do the same thing.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thank you.